I have been wanting to make this video for such a long time. It was literally one of the first topics I thought of back when I started doing vlogs, and I was like, I just have to do this video because despite knowing from a really young age that I really wanted to be a mum, I 100% wanted to have children, there was one big factor in my life that was holding me back, making me hesitate massively, and that was the fact that I knew that I probably wouldn't cope very well when they got sick. So now that I have 3 children, if you're new to my channel, I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I obviously have quite a bit of experience in that, and I really wanted to be able to sit down and talk to you really kind of honestly and frankly about how that has affected my life, the ways in which it hasn't been as bad as I thought and the ways in which it has been exactly as I kind of suspected it would be, and how having emetophobia kind of comes into my daily life as a parent. I really want this video to be as positive as possible and as non-triggering as possible, so I'm not going to get graphic with anything. This isn't going to be like a long list of all the times my children have been ill, and I'm going to just talk about mainly my feelings on the subject, and I know that everyone's triggered by different things, and sometimes even saying the word can be hard, and I've been there myself, but I just want to let you know that I'm conscious that I just want to make this a positive video. I'd really love for it to be kind of empowering if you're feeling the same as I was before children and you just think, I honestly don't think I'd be able to cope. I'm hoping that this will give you maybe a bit more confidence, and yeah, it's just meant to be a overall positive video on the topic. I promise I won't get too graphic because I know that can be really hard to listen to. And if you're anything like me, you are possibly watching these videos because you're in a bit of a Google hole on the subject, and you're kind of slowly making yourself feel worse and worse about the subject and kind of putting more fear into yourself. I have been there with the Google holes. So if you've stumbled across my video, I'm hoping that this is going to be slightly more easygoing and positive for you. The only time things will get remotely graphic is if I talk about kind of how I've coped cleaning up after my children being sick, and if I do get into that area I will give you advanced warning so that you can skip through that bit. This is a hard topic for me to talk about. Right now I'm in a really good place, hence why I can make this video, and also my children are out of the house because I really wanted to be able to sit down, press record and just say exactly what I was feeling. I didn't want it to be too planned out or too rehearsed, and I didn't want any interruptions, so this is like the perfect opportunity to do it, so I'm just going to get going with it. I think first of all I need to give you a bit of a brief history about me and emetophobia. I'm sure if you're watching this video you most likely know what emetophobia is, but if you're watching this and you aren't sure, it is the fear of being sick or someone else being sick. I'm using that word because I find that easier to say than some of the other words for it. But yeah, that's what it is, and it's something that I have had since childhood. And I think the thing with a lot of emetophobics is they say that there's usually a big event that you either remember or don't remember that triggers it. And for me, there's a couple that stand out from my childhood. I have 3 brothers and sisters, and at one point in my childhood, obviously these bugs go around all the time, but at one point there were several times where I was the last one of my siblings to get it, and it took quite a while to go through everybody, and I'd just be kind of watching everyone go down and thinking, it's going to be me, it's going to be me, and then sort of thinking, oh no, maybe it isn't because it's been enough time, and then coming down with it. And after that happened maybe 2 or 3 times, it just, something in my head just went, and I started associating the fact that I was always going to be the last one and I was always going to catch something, but it was going to be a long process of like kind of suspense and fear and waiting, and that's what I think, that's why I think I have this phobia. I think that it stems from those couple of times where I watched everyone else get it and I kind of knew it was coming for me, and that feeling is kind of, that sums up emetophobia for me. It's the fear that I'm going to catch something, and for me it's all about control. It's about not being in control of my body, and I hate that feeling. Not just with being sick, with anything that makes my body feel different and like I'm not the one completely in control of it is just bound to sort of rile me up. So now that I'm older, I have a lot more perspective on it, and it seems obvious that that's something that would have affected me. So yeah, that's what it is. So there was a couple of times in childhood that I remember specifically, and one of those times I'd gone on a school trip, so I was away from my family. And my mum, you know, she'd been saying, oh, you might not be able to go. She'd been kind of preparing me, like, you know, saying you might get ill. And then it got to the day, and I think it must have been about 4 or 5 days since the last person in the family got ill. So we thought I was in the clear. But then obviously what happened was I ended up getting ill when I was away, and it was in the middle of the night, and I was on my own. I had a friend. I was sharing a room with a friend, but she was asleep, and we were, I think, 10, so it's quite a young age to be on your own all night with something like that happening. And I sort of think in my head that was the moment that the fear really set in for me, and I thought that was horrible and I never ever want that to happen again. And since then I've been trying my very best to avoid that happening ever again. I have had varying degrees of emetophobia throughout my life. I've found that sometimes I'm doing really well with it and other times I'm not, and sometimes different aspects will affect me. So in my kind of uni days and before that, when, you know, we started drinking with our friends and stuff, I was very wary of people who were very drunk, and I would just not want to be around them. I used to hate the bus at uni that would go from the town centre back to the campus, like the last bus. And anywhere where I felt trapped and like I couldn't make a quick exit if I needed to, if something happened, I would just get very I'd feel the adrenaline and just hate every minute of it, and just feel like I was trapped and not able to kind of run away. Because for me, when something happens, my gut instinct is to run. Literally, I'm out of there straight away. I can't stop it. I just have to go. I have to get away. And that's something that I don't think will ever change, really. There's been times in my life where even just seeing it on the floor would kind of give me the same reaction as if someone had like jumped out and shocked me. It would properly just get my adrenaline up straight away and make me feel on edge for a good few hours afterwards. And then there's been other times in life, and this is more kind of where I'm at the moment, where it's not really been that bad at all, and you know, seeing someone drunk, being sick won't faze me as long as I can get away and I'm at a safe enough distance and I don't have to like look after them. And you know, seeing instances of it happening, I'm totally fine. The only thing that will affect me, and again it boils down to like the crux of my phobia, is if I think I'm going to catch it. So in a sense, any sort of sick that isn't like bug sick, I'm kind of okay with, but if I think there's a tiny chance, however small, that it might be passed on to me, that's where my phobia is at the moment. So where that comes into it with having children, obviously they get bugs all the time and you're kind of thrown in at the deep end. So that is something that I do struggle with, and I've had to sort of develop certain coping mechanisms for. In regards to having children, before I had my children, it was always a source of worry for me. It was, how will I cope? I know I'll find this hard, and you know, how do other people do it? And there just isn't information out there, you know, no one's just talking about this. It's probably on YouTube, that's about it. My emetophobia was actually quite bad. Around 2008 was the last time before children that it was quite bad, after years of it being kind of okay and just managing it really well. And that was, I'd been travelling, and when I came back it was winter, and I think it was the first winter that norovirus was like a thing, and the papers were making such a big deal out of it, and lots of people were getting ill. And that sort of winter I just totally kind of went to the other end of the spectrum and just got really paranoid about it, and kind of it affected me wanting to go out, and I kind of just wanted to hole up in my bedroom and not kind of go and be anywhere where I could catch anything. And that was the last time before kids that it was really bad, and it was that point when that was the first time I really thought maybe my life would be easier if I didn't have children, and maybe it would be kinder all round on everyone, and I honestly don't think I'm going to cope with it. I think it's just going to rule my life. Luckily for me, I got pregnant accidentally. I wasn't planning to have children at 25, but it just happened, and this was 2010 that I had my eldest. This was 2 years after things got quite bad again with my emetophobia. So obviously I was thrown in at the deep end. I didn't really get a chance to think anymore about whether I should or shouldn't have children because I have this massive fear. It kind of just happened, and obviously that was the best way for me to do it, because I think otherwise I would have just worried about it too much, and it probably would have affected my decision to have children. I honestly, at one stage it was that bad that I thought, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So my first big test with emetophobia and having children was obviously pregnancy. This was something that had scared me for years. I did not want to think about the fact that I might feel sick, be sick because I was pregnant. You know, if I could leave out any sort of pregnancy symptom, that would be it, and I just could not even think about it. Obviously I got pregnant accidentally, and one of the first things I noticed before I realised I was pregnant was the nausea, because obviously I honed in on that, and I have to say that of all my worries, that was the least worry for me, because I am so hell-bent on doing anything possible to not be sick. I'm quite good at managing nausea, and I found with my morning sickness it was okay to, I could hold it at bay, and I wasn't actually sick with my first pregnancy. With my second baby I was sick a couple of times, but I actually found that okay as well. For me it's more the worry beforehand, and then the actual act of doing it is kind of like a relief, because it's never as bad as the anxiety of thinking about it. And I felt it sort of helped me because I knew it was happening for a reason and it wasn't because I was sick. That also helped my mindset. So for me, morning sickness and nausea in pregnancy was not a big deal, and I would 100% get pregnant again and not worry about it. So that was a real positive for me. I remember worrying about when my son would have his first sort of bug, his first sick bug, and how I would cope with that, and that was a big thing for me. It was the thinking of when's it going to happen, and then it actually happening. That was like a big moment for me, and I didn't cope greatly with it, but I didn't run away and cope awfully with it, and luckily for me Sam was around when it happened, so I could kind of say, I'm not great with this, can you deal with this? And we got through it, and he didn't pass it on to anyone, so that was really positive too. But I do remember looking back, I mean this was like 5 years ago now, but I do remember looking back at that, and it still feels like quite a big milestone for me. As I said before, I have 3 children now, and you know, they've had all sorts of bugs. It happens usually a couple of times during winter, and all honestly I cope okay with it. There has been one time in the whole 6 years that I've been a parent where they've passed it on to me. Just one time, which I think is pretty good odds. And again, the worry about it was far worse than it actually happening. Once it happened, I was sort of just in coping mode. I'm like, okay, well the worst has happened now. Now all that's left is just to deal with it and get through it. So again, it was kind of a weird relief when it actually happened, because it's the worry that really kind of affects my head and my mental state. And before I had kids, I had no idea how often you would pick up bugs from them. I was hoping that because, you know, you've been through all this as a child yourself, so I thought, oh well, maybe it won't be that bad. But I'd hear stories of parents getting stuff from their kids all the time, and I just think, I can't cope with that. So yeah, hopefully you can take a positive from it, that it's only happened once for me so far. And another thing that I've read, and I totally think this is true from my experience as well, is that us emetophobes, because we're so kind of focused on not getting sick ourselves, we, out of all people, are less likely to catch bugs, because we're so focused on not getting sick ourselves. We wash our hands a lot, and if you're anything like me, you've read a lot into how these things kind of spread. So like, I have a lot of knowledge, far more than I need to, and to be honest, when I do start reading into it, it makes me more fearful, so I've sort of tried to stop doing that. But I do have probably far more knowledge than the average person on how these bugs spread. So I've kind of armed myself with the protection and the knowledge to not get ill as many times as other people do, and I think that is definitely true because I just haven't been ill that much. I'm really like diligent with cleaning and all sorts of things that I'm not going to go into because it's just kind of, I feel like it's scaremongering a little bit to go into that. As I said, I've been wanting to make this video for so long. It's been about a year, I think, that I've had this in my head, and it's because I feel like if we talk about it, the more honest we are, the better we're able to cope with it, and it does help to share things. If you want to leave me a comment, I would love to hear from you. I find it so helpful when I hear from other parents who also struggle with these feelings and these fears. I'm learning all the time that the more I talk about it and the more honest I am, despite the fact that I kind of want to fight against that instinct, and I don't really want to be honest about it because it brings those feelings up for me, and I try so hard to push those feelings down, but the more I am honest about it, especially with the people closest to me, the more confident I feel about managing my emetophobia. And I really hope, if you're watching this and you haven't had children yet but you're worried that you might not be able to cope, I'm really hoping that you have been able to see some positivity in what I've said, and I'd just like to end by saying that although I have struggled in the past, I probably will have bad phases again with my children concerning being sick. It hasn't been half as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I totally am glad I didn't let it rule my decision to have children. And the most important thing is, as long as when I'm struggling I access the help and support that I can do, that makes things better for me.